In a lively city park where the air buzzed with laughter and chatter, an ordinary day was about to take an extraordinary turn. The park was a melting pot of people, young and old, rich and poor, all sharing the same space under the warm afternoon sun. Among them was a young girl who navigated her way through the crowd in her wheelchair. Her name wasn't important here. What mattered was her spirit. Despite her disability, she carried herself with a quiet confidence that made her stand out. She had a bright smile that could light up even the dullest corners of the park. The girl loved coming to this park. It was her escape from the four walls of her home, a place where she felt free, even if just for a little while. On this particular day, she was humming a tune as she wheeled herself along the winding paths, soaking in the beauty of nature around her. Birds chirped overhead, kids played tag on the grassy areas, and the distant sound of a guitar added rhythm to the scene. Everything seemed perfect, until it wasn't. As she approached a narrow section of the path blocked by some carelessly placed trash cans, she slowed down. Maneuvering her wheelchair in tight spaces wasn't easy, but she didn't mind. She'd faced bigger challenges before and always found a way around them. But today, luck wasn't on her side. Just as she tried to steer clear of the obstacle, a loud rumble broke the peaceful atmosphere. A group of bikers roared into the park, their motorcycles growling like beasts. They parked near the entrance, drawing attention with their flashy gear and intimidating demeanor. One biker stood out from the rest. He was tall, muscular, and wore a leather jacket covered in patches that screamed rebellion. His attitude matched his appearance. He strutted around like he owned the place. As he glanced around, his eyes landed on the girl struggling with her wheelchair. Instead of offering help, he smirked. His friends noticed too, and soon they were laughing, making crude jokes at her expense. Their words cut deep, slicing through the otherwise joyful ambiance of the park. The girl froze, her hands gripping the wheels of her chair tightly. Humiliation burned in her chest, but she refused to let tears fall. She told herself to stay strong, to ignore their taunts. But it wasn't easy. Every insult felt heavier than the last, weighing her down until she thought she might crumble. The other parkgoers watched silently, some shaking their heads in disapproval, others looking away. Uncomfortably, no one stepped forward to intervene. What none of them realized, at least not yet, was that someone else was watching. Perched casually on a bench nearby, sipping coffee, sat a man whose presence commanded respect without him having to say a word. He had been enjoying the tranquility of the park when the commotion began. At first, he hesitated to get involved. After all, he was just a visitor passing through, taking a break from his busy schedule. But as the biker's cruel words echoed louder and louder, something inside him snapped. Empathy surged through him, fueled by memories of his own struggles growing up. He knew what it meant to feel powerless, to be mocked or underestimated because of who you were. And now, seeing this young girl endure such cruelty, he couldn't stay silent any longer. Setting his cup aside, he rose from the bench, his towering frame casting a shadow over the scene. Without saying a word, he began walking toward the group, each step deliberate and steady. The energy in the park shifted instantly. People turned, their heads, curiosity piqued by the sudden appearance of this imposing figure. Even the bikers paused mid-laugh, sensing the change in the air. The leader of the group, the one who had been mocking the girl, straightened up, trying to mask his unease with bravado. "What do you want?" he spat, his voice laced with defiance. But there was no mistaking the flicker of fear in his eyes. Without raising his voice, the man spoke calmly yet firmly. "You think humiliating someone makes you tough?" he asked, his tone cutting through the tension like a knife. The words hung in the air, heavy and unyielding. For the first time since arriving, the biker found himself at a loss for words. Around them, the park fell eerily quiet, every eye fixed on the unfolding drama. Little did anyone know, this was only the beginning of a story that would leave a lasting mark on everyone present. The biker's bravado faltered for a moment, but he quickly tried to regain his ground. "Who the hell are you?" he shot back, his voice louder now, trying to mask his unease with aggression. The man standing before him didn't flinch. Instead, he took another step closer, his calm demeanor contrasting sharply with the chaos the bikers had brought to the park. People around them held their breath, unsure of what was about to happen next. "I'm someone who believes in treating others with respect," the man replied, his deep voice steady and unwavering. His words carried weight, not because they were shouted or laced with anger, but because they came from a place of genuine conviction. He glanced at the girl still sitting in her wheelchair, her head bowed slightly as she tried to shield herself from the humiliation. Then, turning back to the biker, he added, "And I don't think you're showing much of that today." The biker opened his mouth to retort, but no words came out. For the first time, he seemed uncertain, his usual cockiness melting under the man's piercing gaze. Around them, whispers rippled through the crowd. Some people recognized the towering figure immediately, his muscular build, his unmistakable presence. Others weren't sure who he was, but it didn't matter. What mattered was the courage he was displaying right now, standing up for someone who couldn't defend herself. "You think being loud and mean makes you strong?" The man continued, addressing not just the biker but also his friends who stood silently behind him. They shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. "Real strength is about kindness. It's about lifting others up instead of tearing them down." His words hit hard like stones skipping across a calm lake, sending ripples through everyone who heard them. The biker clenched his fists, torn between lashing out and backing down. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by someone who looked so unshakable. But there was something about this man's tone, calm yet firm, that made him hesitate. Maybe it was the way he carried himself, exuding authority without arrogance. Or maybe it was the realization dawning on him that he was losing control of the situation. Whatever it was, the biker felt exposed, vulnerable even. Meanwhile, the young girl slowly raised her head, her eyes meeting those of the man. Standing up for her, there was gratitude in her gaze, but also surprise. She hadn't expected anyone to intervene, not here, not now. Life had taught her that sometimes people looked away when things got uncomfortable. But this stranger hadn't. He'd stepped forward, risking confrontation, simply because he believed it was the right thing to do. The man crouched down beside her, bringing himself to her level. His expression softened, and he spoke gently, almost as if the rest of the world had faded away. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice filled with warmth. She nodded hesitantly, though tears still glistened in her eyes. He gave her a reassuring smile, one that said, "You're stronger than you think." Turning back to the biker, the man stood up, his towering frame once again dominating the scene. "Apologize," he said firmly, leaving no room for argument. The word hung in the air, simple yet powerful. The biker blinked, caught off guard. An apology? From him? That wasn't part of his plan. He stammered, searching for a response, but the man cut him off before he could speak. "Look, we all make mistakes," the man said, his tone softening slightly but still carrying authority. "But owning up to them takes guts. And trust me, apologizing won't make you weak, it'll make you human." His words struck a chord, not just with the biker but with everyone watching. Parents exchanged knowing glances, nodding in agreement. Kids whispered to each other, their admiration for the man growing with every passing second. For a long moment, silence enveloped the park. The biker stared at the ground, his jaw tightening. Pride battled shame within him, waging an internal war that played out visibly on his face. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he muttered something under his breath. It wasn't clear enough for anyone to hear, so the man prompted him again, his voice calm but insistent. "Louder," he said. "She deserves to hear it." Reluctantly, the biker repeated himself, this time louder. "I'm sorry," he mumbled, his voice barely audible. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. The girl looked up at him, her expression a mix of shock and relief. She didn't say anything, she didn't need to. Her silence spoke volumes. Satisfied but not entirely convinced of the biker's sincerity, the man addressed the group one last time. "Remember this moment," he told them, his gaze sweeping over each of their faces. "Because how you treat People says more about you than anything else." With that, he turned his attention back to the girl, offering her a warm smile. "You've got a lot of strength," he told her softly. "Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise." As the cue, tension began to ease. The crowd erupted into murmurs of approval. Some clapped quietly while others simply nodded in agreement. The bikers, realizing they were no longer welcome, mounted their motorcycles and sped off, leaving behind only the faint scent of exhaust fumes. The park returned to its earlier rhythm, but the atmosphere had changed. There was a newfound sense of unity among the visitors, a shared understanding that kindness could triumph over cruelty. Unbeknownst to most, however, this was far from the end of the story. Little did they know, the events of that afternoon would ripple outward, touching lives in ways none of them could have imagined. For now, though, the man who had stood up for the girl remained seated beside her, chatting casually, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. To him, it wasn't about heroics, it was about doing what was right. And that, more than anything, left an indelible mark on everyone present. The man stayed seated beside the girl, his towering presence now softened by the warmth in his voice. He didn't rush to leave or seek attention for what he had done. Instead, he focused on her, asking simple questions that made her feel seen and valued. "Do you come here often?" he asked, glancing around at the park's vibrant scenery. She nodded shyly, her earlier confidence slowly returning as she realized this stranger wasn't going anywhere just yet. "I like it here," she replied softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's peaceful. Usually." The last word hung in the air, a subtle acknowledgement of what had just happened. The man chuckled lightly, not dismissively, but with understanding. "Yeah, life has a way of throwing curveballs when we least expect them," he said. His words weren't heavy. They carried a sense of shared experience, as if he too had faced moments where peace was disrupted by chaos. As they talked, the crowd began to disperse, though many lingered nearby, stealing glances at the pair. Some parents pulled their children closer, using the moment as a lesson in kindness and courage. Others simply watched, marveling at how one person's actions could shift the energy of an entire space. A few people approached cautiously, wanting to thank the man but unsure if they should interrupt. One elderly woman finally mustered the courage, tapping him gently on the shoulder. "Excuse me," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I just wanted to say thank you. Not everyone would have done what you did." Her eyes glistened, with unshed tears, and the sincerity in her words struck a chord. The man smiled warmly, brushing off the praise with humility. "It's not about me," he said. "It's about doing what's right. We all have a responsibility to look out for each other." His response resonated deeply, not just with the woman but with everyone within earshot. It was a reminder that heroism isn't always about grand gestures. It's about showing up, even in small ways, when someone needs help. As the woman walked away, wiping her eyes, others felt emboldened to share their thoughts. A young boy, no older than 10, tugged at his mother's hand and pointed toward the man. "Is that the rock?" he whispered loudly enough for those around to hear. The question sparked a wave of recognition among the crowd. Murmurs spread quickly. Yes, it was him. Dwayne Johnson, the actor known not only for his larger-than-life roles, but also for his genuine personality and philanthropy. Yet, despite the growing buzz, he remained unfazed, keeping his focus on the girl. Fame didn't matter here, humanity did. For the girl, though, it added another layer of awe to an already surreal day. She had never imagined meeting someone so famous, let alone having him stand up for her in such a personal way. Their conversation continued naturally, flowing like any interaction between two people who found common ground. He learned that she loved art, spending hours sketching and painting whenever she could. Her face lit up as she described her favorite pieces, her passion evident in every word. "I want to be an artist someday," she admitted, her voice tinged with both hope and hesitation. "But sometimes I wonder if I can really make it happen." Without missing a beat, the man leaned forward, his expression serious yet encouraging. "Let me tell you something," he said, his tone firm but kind. "Dreams are worth fighting for. Life will throw obstacles your way, I know that better than most, but don't let anyone, including yourself, tell you that you can't achieve them." His words carried the weight of experience, drawing from his own journey of overcoming challenges to reach success. To emphasize his point, he pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. "Here's what we're going to do," he said, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. "I happen to know a few people in the art world. How about I introduce you to someone who can guide you? Someone who can help you take your talent to the next level?" The girl's eyes widened in disbelief. Was this really happening? She nodded eagerly, unable to find words to express her gratitude. News of the encounter traveled fast, thanks to the power of social media. Within hours, photos and videos of the incident flooded platforms like Instagram and Twitter. People praised the actor not just for his physical strength, but for his moral courage. Comments poured in from all over the world, celebrating the importance of standing up against bullying and supporting those in need. Hashtags like "Our Kindness Matters" and "Clark Stand Up for Others" trended globally, sparking conversations about empathy and accountability. Back at the park, the girl's mother arrived, alerted by a neighbor who had witnessed everything. Tears streamed down her face as she hugged her daughter tightly, relief and pride mingling in her embrace. She turned to the man, her voice choked with emotion. "Thank you," she said, over and over again. "You've given her something today that no one else could, a reason to believe in herself again." He waved off her gratitude with a gentle smile, insisting that the credit belonged to her daughter. "She's the real star here," he said, gesturing toward the girl. "All I did was remind her of what she already knows deep down, that she's capable of amazing things." His humility only endeared him further to the family and the crowd. By the time he stood up to leave, the park felt different, not just because of what had happened, but because of the ripple effect it created. Before walking away, he knelt down one last time to speak directly to the girl. "Remember this day," he told her, his voice steady and sincere. "Not because of what happened, but because of how you handled it. You showed incredible strength, and that's something to be proud of." With that, he gave her a fist bump, sealing the moment with a gesture of solidarity. As he disappeared into the crowd, the girl sat there, her heart full and her spirit renewed. The events of the day had been unpredictable, even painful at times, but they had also brought unexpected blessings. And while the man may have left the park, his impact lingered, reminding everyone present that even in the face of cruelty, compassion has the power to transform lives. The park slowly returned to its usual rhythm, but the energy was different now. The laughter of children playing and the chatter of families enjoying the afternoon carried a renewed sense of warmth, as if the earlier confrontation had cleared away some invisible heaviness from the air. The girl sat quietly in her wheelchair, still processing everything that had happened. Her mother stayed by her side, holding her hand tightly, offering silent support. For the first time in hours, the girl allowed herself to smile, a small, tentative curve of her lips at first, but it grew wider as she replayed the man's words in her mind. "You showed incredible strength." She hadn't thought of it that way before. All she'd wanted was to get through the day without drawing attention to herself, just like any other day. But now, she realized something important. Standing up for yourself didn't always mean fighting back with words or actions. Sometimes it meant refusing to let cruelty break your spirit. And she had done exactly that. As the crowd thinned out, a few people lingered nearby, still buzzing about what they'd witnessed. One woman approached the girl and her mother cautiously, her hands clutching a sketch pad and a set of colored pencils. "I'm an art teacher," she explained softly, kneeling down so she could speak directly to the girl. "I overheard you talking about your love for painting, and I'd love to help however I can. Maybe we can work on some projects together?" The girl blinked in surprise, unsure how to respond. This kind stranger wasn't just offering advice. She was extending a hand, a connection to someone who shared her passion. It felt surreal, almost too good to be true. Her mother nudged her gently, encouraging her to accept the offer. "That sounds amazing," the girl finally said, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. The art teacher smiled warmly and handed her the sketch pad. "Consider it a gift," she said. "And remember, creativity has no limits." News of the incident continued to spread, not just locally, but globally. Social media played its part, amplifying the story far beyond the confines of the park. Videos captured by bystanders went viral, showing snippets of the biker's taunts, the man's intervention, and the emotional aftermath. People couldn't get enough of it, not because of the drama, but because of the humanity it showcased. Comments poured in from every corner of the world, praising the actor for stepping in and celebrating the resilience of the young girl. Strangers shared their own stories of facing adversity, creating a thread of solidarity that spanned continents. One comment stood out among the rest. "This is why kindness matters. It costs nothing, yet it changes everything." Thousands of users liked and reposted it, turning it into a rallying cry for compassion. Media outlets picked up the story, interviewing witnesses and even reaching out to the actor himself. When asked about the incident during a press conference later that week, he kept his response simple and heartfelt. "It's not about me," he emphasized. "It's about reminding ourselves that we all have the power to make someone's day better, or worse. Choose wisely." Meanwhile, the biker found himself at the center of a very different kind of storm. Back at his group's hangout spot, he struggled to process what had happened. His friends avoided eye contact, unsure how to address the elephant in the room. They'd seen him act tough countless times before, but this was different. For once, his bravado hadn't worked. It had backfired spectacularly. Worse still, the video of the confrontation was everywhere, with captions calling him out for his behavior. He scrolled through his phone, wincing at the harsh comments directed at him. Some called him names, while others questioned whether he had any decency left in him. At first, he tried to brush it off, telling himself it didn't matter what strangers thought. But deep down, he knew it did. The look of shame on his face when the man had confronted him, that moment kept replaying in his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that he'd been given a mirror, forced to see himself as others saw him. And what he saw wasn't pretty. That night, unable to sleep, he sat alone in his room, staring at the ceiling. He thought about the girl, about the way she'd looked so small and vulnerable in her wheelchair. He thought about the man's words. Real strength is about lifting others up. By morning, something inside him had shifted. He decided to visit a local community center known for its outreach programs. Hesitant at first, he walked in and asked to speak with someone in charge. A volunteer greeted him warmly, listening patiently as he explained why he was there. "I messed up," he admitted, his voice thick with regret. "I want to make things right. If not for her, then for myself." The volunteer nodded, understanding that change often starts with accountability. Over the next few weeks, the biker began volunteering at the center, assisting with workshops aimed at promoting inclusivity and respect. At first, it felt awkward. He wasn't used to being around people who were so different from him. But gradually, he started opening up, sharing his story and learning from theirs. He realized that everyone carried their own struggles, even if they weren't visible on the surface. By helping others, he found a path toward redemption, one small step at a time. Back at the park, life moved forward, but the impact of that day lingered. Inspired by the girl's courage and the man's intervention, the local council announced plans to revamp the area, making it more accessible for people with disabilities. Fundraisers were organized, bringing the community together in ways no one had anticipated. Murals depicting themes of resilience and unity began appearing on the walls surrounding the park, each one painted by volunteers eager to contribute to the positive change. The girl, meanwhile, dove deeper into her art. With encouragement from her new mentor and the support of her family, she created pieces that reflected her journey, the pain, the triumphs, and the hope for a brighter future. Her work caught the attention of local galleries, and soon, she was invited to display her paintings in an exhibition. On the opening night, surrounded by friends, family, and strangers who had followed her story online. She stood tall, her wheelchair, barely noticeable amidst the sea of admiration. Through it all, the man remained a quiet presence in the background, cheering her on from afar. He didn't seek recognition or praise. He simply wanted to remind her, and everyone else, that kindness, courage, and empathy have the power to transform lives. What had started as an ordinary day in the park had become a testament to the ripple effect of doing the right thing, proving that even in moments of darkness, light can shine through. The girl's journey didn't stop at the park or the art exhibition. Her story, once shared online, took on a life of its own, inspiring people in ways she never imagined. Local news outlets reached out to interview her, and though she was nervous, at first she decided to share her side of the story, not for fame but because she hoped it might encourage others facing similar challenges. Sitting beside her mother during one such interview, she spoke softly yet confidently about how that day had changed her perspective. "I used to think being different made me weak," she admitted, her voice steady despite the cameras pointed at her. "But now I know that being different is what makes me strong. It's okay to feel hurt when someone is cruel, but it's also important to remember that their words don't define you." Her honesty struck a chord with viewers, many of whom left heartfelt messages praising her courage. Some even shared their own struggles, saying her words gave them hope to keep going. Her newfound confidence spilled over into other areas of her life too. She started attending an after-school program for young artists, where she met kids from all walks of life, who shared her passion for creativity. Together they worked on collaborative projects, learning not just about art but also about teamwork and empathy. One project stood out, a mural designed to celebrate diversity, featuring vibrant colors and bold imagery that represented unity. The entire community rallied behind it, donating supplies and volunteering their time to bring the vision to life. As the mural neared completion, excitement buzzed through the neighborhood. People gathered daily to watch the transformation unfold, marveling at how something so simple could have such a profound impact. On the day of its unveiling, the park was packed with families, friends, and curious onlookers, eager to see the finished piece. The girl stood front and center, her wheelchair positioned proudly near the base of the mural. When asked to say a few words, she smiled shyly before addressing the crowd. "This mural isn't just about me," she began, her voice carrying more strength than anyone expected. "It's about all of us. We're different, sure, but we're stronger together. And if we can lift each other up instead of tearing each other down, there's no limit to what we can achieve." The applause that followed was thunderous, echoing across the park as tears welled up in more than a few eyes. Meanwhile, the biker continued his efforts to make amends. Volunteering at the community center became a regular part of his routine, and he threw himself into the work wholeheartedly. At first it was hard. He felt out of place among people who seemed so much kinder and more patient than him. But slowly, he began to find his footing. He helped organize workshops, mentored teens struggling with anger management, and even joined a program aimed at fostering understanding between different groups within the community. One evening, while helping paint part of the same mural the girl had inspired, he found himself standing next to her. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Then hesitantly, he broke the silence. "I'm sorry," he said again, this time without prompting, "for everything. I was wrong, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be better." His sincerity was undeniable, and though forgiveness didn't come instantly, the girl nodded slowly, acknowledging his effort. "It's not easy to admit when you're wrong," she replied thoughtfully. "But it's a start." Those few words meant the world to him. They weren't absolution, but they were a step toward healing, for both of them. Over time, their interactions grew less awkward, and they eventually developed a mutual respect. While they weren't friends in the traditional sense, they shared a bond forged through growth and accountability. Back in the public eye, the man who had intervened, the actor, continued to use his platform for good. Inspired by the girl's resilience and the community's response, he launched a campaign focused on promoting kindness and inclusivity. Partnering with organizations dedicated to supporting marginalized voices, he traveled to schools, parks, and community centers, sharing stories of everyday heroes who had made a difference simply by choosing compassion over cruelty. His message resonated deeply, especially among younger audiences who looked up to him not just as an entertainer, but as a role model. One particular event stood out, a gathering at the park where the incident had occurred. Hundreds of people showed up, including the girl, her family, and even the biker. Standing on a makeshift stage, the actor addressed the crowd with characteristic humility. "This park has become a symbol of something bigger than any of us," he said, gesturing to the colorful mural behind him. "It's proof that change starts with small actions, standing up for someone, lending a hand, or simply choosing kindness when it's easier to look away." His speech ended with a call to action. Let's carry this spirit forward. Let's create spaces where everyone feels seen, heard, and valued, because when we do that, we build communities worth living in. The cheers that erupted were deafening, a testament to the collective desire for positive change. In the weeks that followed, the ripple effects of that single afternoon continued to spread. Schools incorporated discussions about empathy and allyship into their curriculums. Neighborhoods organized cleanup drives and cultural festivals to foster connection. Even businesses pledged to prioritize accessibility and inclusion in their practices. What had begun as a moment of conflict had evolved into a movement fueled by hope and determination. For the girl, the experience reinforced her belief in the power of resilience. She knew life wouldn't always be easy. There would still be days when doubt crept in or when others tried to bring her down. But she also knew she wasn't alone. She had her family, her mentors, and a growing network of supporters who believed in her potential. Most importantly, she had herself, a quiet yet unshakable force determined to rise above adversity. And as she wheeled herself through the newly renovated park one crisp morning, surrounded by laughter and chatter, she couldn't help but smile. The scars of that day remained, but they no longer defined her. Instead, they reminded her of how far she'd come and how much farther she could go. As the weeks turned into months, the changes sparked by that pivotal day in the park became undeniable. The once ordinary green space had transformed into a vibrant hub of creativity and connection, thanks in large part to the mural and the community's renewed sense of purpose. People came from neighboring towns just to see it, a kaleidoscope of colors and symbols representing unity, resilience, and hope. But more than its visual appeal, the mural served as a reminder of what could happen when people chose kindness over cruelty. The girl found herself at the center of this transformation, though she never sought the spotlight. Her art continued to gain recognition, not because it was flawless, but because it told a story, a deeply human one. Each brushstroke carried emotion. Each color reflected a piece of her journey. Local galleries invited her to showcase her work, and soon, she was collaborating with other young artists on projects aimed at spreading positivity. One such collaboration resulted in a traveling exhibit titled Rising Together, which toured schools and community centers across the state. Her mother often joked that their tiny apartment was starting to feel like an art studio, cluttered with canvases, paints, and sketches. But there was pride in her voice, too. She watched her daughter blossom, not just as an artist, but as a person, finding strength in vulnerability and joy in sharing her gifts with others. "She's teaching me as much as I've ever taught her," her mother would say to anyone who asked about the girl's success. Meanwhile, the biker's journey toward redemption unfolded quietly but steadily. He wasn't seeking forgiveness or approval. He simply wanted to prove to himself more than anyone else that he could be better. At the community center, he threw himself into mentoring teens, many of whom reminded him of his younger self, angry, lost, and searching for belonging. He didn't sugarcoat things when talking to them. Instead, he shared his mistakes openly, hoping they'd learn from his missteps rather than repeat them. One evening, during a workshop on conflict resolution, a teenager confronted him directly. "Why should we listen to you?" the boy demanded, arms crossed defiantly. "You were the bad guy once." The room fell silent, all eyes on the biker. For a moment, he hesitated, unsure how to respond. Then, taking a deep breath, he nodded. "You're right," he said. "I was the bad guy, and maybe I still am sometimes. But here's the thing. Being the bad guy doesn't mean you stay that way forever. You can choose to change. Every day is a new chance to do better. His honesty struck a chord with the group. Slowly, the boy uncrossed his arms, nodding slightly. It wasn't full acceptance, but it was progress, and progress mattered more than perfection. Over time, the biker earned the trust of those around him, not through grand gestures, but through consistent effort. He showed up when he said he would, listened without judgment, and admitted when he didn't have all the answers. These small acts of integrity began to rewrite the narrative of who he was. Back at the park, life buzzed with activity. Families gathered for picnics, joggers looped the trails, and kids played tag near the mural. On weekends, volunteers hosted events ranging from poetry readings to dance performances, turning the space into a stage for expression and celebration. The girl attended many of these events, finding inspiration in the diversity of talents and stories. She especially loved the storytelling nights, where people of all ages shared personal experiences of overcoming adversity. Each tale reinforced her belief that everyone carries struggles, and that sharing them can lighten the load. The actor remained a steady presence in the background, cheering on the efforts of the community while continuing his own advocacy work. Though his schedule kept him busy, he made time to visit the park whenever he could, often bringing friends and colleagues along to join the cause. During one such visit, he helped organize a charity run aimed at raising funds for accessibility, improvements in public spaces. Hundreds of participants signed up, including the girl, who completed the course alongside her mother. Crossing the finish line, she grinned widely, holding up a sign that read, "Strength comes in all forms." Social media played a key role in amplifying the movement, with hashtags like #kindness in action and #choose to rise trending regularly. People posted photos of themselves volunteering, creating art, or simply performing random acts of kindness. What started as a local effort grew into a global phenomenon, inspiring individuals and communities worldwide to prioritize empathy and inclusivity. Teachers used the story in classrooms to spark discussions about bullying and allyship. Parents referenced it during bedtime conversations with their children, emphasizing the importance of standing up for others. But perhaps the most profound impact was felt within the relationships forged through these shared experiences. The girl, the biker, and the actor weren't close friends, but they shared a unique bond, one built on growth, accountability, and mutual respect. They represented different parts of the same story: the victim who refused to be defined by her pain, the perpetrator who chose to confront his flaws, and the advocate who reminded everyone that change begins with action. On the anniversary of that fateful day, the park hosted a special event to celebrate how far they'd come. Speeches were given, songs were sung, and laughter filled the air. As dusk settled in, the girl rolled her wheelchair to the base of the mural where a small crowd had gathered. She looked out at the faces, some familiar, others new, and took a deep breath. "A year ago, I thought my world had ended," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "But today I know it was just beginning. This park, this mural, and all of you remind me that even in our darkest moments, light can break through. We're stronger together, and we're capable of so much, more than we think." Her words hung in the air, met with applause and cheers. Nearby, the baker stood quietly, his head bowed in reflection. He hadn't planned to speak, but something inside urged him to step forward. Clearing his throat, he addressed the crowd. "I don't deserve to stand here," he admitted, his voice raw with emotion. "But I'm grateful for the second chances I've been given. If my story helps even one person realize they can change, then it's worth it." Finally, the actor joined them, placing a hand on both their shoulders. "This isn't about us," he said, gesturing to the crowd. "It's about what we can build together. Let's keep choosing kindness, keep lifting each other up, and keep proving that hope is always stronger than hate." As fireworks lit up the night sky, the park erupted in celebration. Strangers hugged, children danced, and tears flowed freely. What had begun as a single act of courage had grown into a testament to the power of humanity, the ability to rise above adversity, to forgive, and to create something beautiful out of pain. And though the journey wasn't over, the promise of tomorrow burned brighter than ever. The months following the anniversary event brought even more transformations, not just in the park but in the lives of those connected to it. The girl, now more confident than ever, began receiving invitations to speak at conferences and schools about her experiences. At first, she hesitated. Public speaking wasn't something that came naturally to her, but with encouragement from her mother and mentor, she decided to embrace the opportunity. Her talks were simple yet powerful, focusing on resilience, self-worth, and the importance of standing up for others. "I learned something important," she told one audience during a school assembly. "When someone tries to make you feel small, they're showing their own weakness, not yours. Don't let them take away your power." These words resonated deeply with students, many of whom approached her afterward to share their own struggles. She listened patiently, offering advice when asked, but mostly just being present. A reminder that sometimes people need someone to hear them without judgment. Her growing influence extended beyond speeches. Inspired by her story, a local bookstore partnered with her to host art workshops for kids with disabilities. The sessions weren't just about painting or drawing. They were about fostering creativity as a tool for healing and expression. Parents watched in awe as their children, often overlooked or underestimated, discovered hidden talents and newfound confidence. One parent tearfully thanked the girl after a session, saying, "You've given my child a voice I didn't know they had." Meanwhile, the biker's efforts to rebuild his life gained momentum. His work at the community center earned him recognition, not as a hero, but as someone committed to making amends. He started leading bike safety programs, teaching teens how to ride responsibly while emphasizing respect for pedestrians and vulnerable road users. It was ironic, almost poetic, that he'd gone from being part of the problem to becoming part of the solution. One day during a program session, a young boy raised his hand timidly. "What if people don't forgive me?" he asked, his voice barely audible. The question hung heavy in the air, mirroring the doubts the biker himself had wrestled with. For a moment he paused, considering his response carefully. "Forgiveness isn't always easy," he admitted, looking directly at the boy. "And sometimes it doesn't come right away, or at all. But what matters is that you try to do better. Apologizing isn't about fixing everything instantly. It's about taking responsibility and showing that you're willing to change." The boy nodded thoughtfully, seemingly reassured by the honesty in his words. As the biker continued his outreach, he found unexpected allies in unlikely places. Some of his old friends from the biking group reached out, curious about the changes they'd seen in him. Though skeptical at first, they eventually joined him in volunteering, helping organize events aimed at bridging gaps between different communities. Together, they hosted charity rides, raising funds for organizations supporting marginalized groups. What began as a personal journey toward redemption evolved into a collective effort to create positive change. Back at the park, the mural remained a focal point for inspiration. Its vibrant colors seemed to grow brighter with each passing month, reflecting the energy of the people who visited it. Families took photos in front of it, couples carved their initials into nearby benches, and artists added subtle touches to keep it fresh and relevant. The space became synonymous with hope, a living testament to the idea that beauty could emerge from pain. The actor, too, stayed connected to the movement, using his platform to amplify its message. During interviews, he often spoke about the ripple effect of kindness, sharing anecdotes from the park and encouraging others to start similar initiatives in their own communities. His social media posts featured updates on the mural, the girl's artwork, and the biker's volunteer work, reminding followers that real heroes weren't defined by fame, but by action. One particularly impactful campaign he launched focused on accessibility. Partnering with architects and urban planners, he advocated for designing public spaces that catered to everyone, regardless of ability. Playgrounds with adaptive swings, wheelchair-friendly trails, and sensory gardens began popping up in parks across the city. Each project bore a plaque inscribed with a simple message: "Inclusion starts here." The media coverage surrounding these developments sparked conversations far beyond the immediate community. News outlets highlighted the story as an example of grassroots activism, proving that ordinary people could drive extraordinary change. Documentaries aired, capturing intimate moments of struggle and triumph. The girl sketching late into the night, the baker mentoring a troubled teen, neighbors coming together to paint murals. Viewers couldn't help but be moved by the authenticity of it all. Yet despite the accolades and attention, the heart of the movement remained grounded in human connection. People showed up for each other, not because they expected anything in return, but because they understood the value of solidarity. Strangers offered rides to those without transportation. Teachers stayed late to tutor struggling students, and shopkeepers donated supplies to community projects. Acts of kindness, no matter how small, created a web of support that strengthened everyone involved. Even the park itself seemed to thrive under this renewed spirit. Flowers bloomed earlier in spring, trees stood taller against the sky, and birds chirped louder in the mornings. It wasn't magic. It was care. Volunteers maintained the space diligently, ensuring it remained clean, safe, and welcoming for all. Children played freely, knowing they were surrounded by love and acceptance. Elders sat on benches smiling as they watched younger generations learn the lessons of empathy and unity. For the girl, the biker, and the actor, the journey wasn't without challenges. There were days when doubt crept in, when progress felt slow or setbacks loomed large. But they leaned on each other and on the community they'd helped build to push through. They reminded themselves that change wasn't linear. It was messy, imperfect, and ongoing. And that was okay. On a crisp autumn morning, the girl returned to the park, her sketchpad balanced on her lap. She wheeled herself to her favorite spot, beneath a sprawling oak tree, where sunlight filtered through golden leaves. As she began to draw, a familiar figure approached. The biker. He carried 2 cups of coffee, handing one to her with a sheepish grin. "Thought you might need a break," he said, sitting down beside her. They chatted casually, laughing over shared memories and marveling at how much had changed since that fateful day. Neither of them mentioned the past outright, but it lingered between them, a reminder of how far they'd come. Later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the park, the actor arrived, joining them under the tree. Together, the 3 of them reflected on the journey, not just theirs, but the collective effort of everyone who had contributed to the transformation. "We did good," the actor said finally, breaking the comfortable silence. "But we're not done yet. There's still so much more to do." The girl smiled, closing her sketchpad. "Yeah," she agreed, "but we'll get there, one step at a time." The final chapter of this story isn't really a conclusion. It's more like a beginning. The girl, the biker, and the actor had each played their part in sparking change, but they understood that real progress wasn't about reaching an endpoint. It was about continuing to move forward, even when the path wasn't clear. Life is messy, unpredictable, and full of challenges, but it's also brimming with opportunities to grow, connect, and make a difference. As winter approached, the park took on a different kind of beauty. Bare branches stretched toward the sky, frost blanketed the grass, and the air carried a crisp chill. Yet despite the cold, the space remained alive with activity. Families bundled up for weekend walks. Volunteers worked tirelessly to prepare the grounds for the upcoming holiday season, and children laughed as they built snowmen near the mural. That colorful masterpiece stood resilient against the elements, its vibrant hues peeking through layers of frost, a metaphor for the strength of the community itself. The girl spent much of her time indoors during the colder months, pouring her energy into her art. Her studio apartment became a sanctuary of creativity, filled with canvases, brushes, and half-finished sketches. She experimented with new techniques, pushing herself out of her comfort zone while staying true to her voice. One project in particular consumed her attention, a series of paintings inspired by the people who had shaped her journey: the biker, the actor, her mother, and countless strangers whose kindness had touched her life. When spring finally returned, she unveiled the collection at a local gallery. Titled "Threads of Us," The exhibit featured portraits infused with symbolism, capturing not just faces but emotions, stories, and connections. Visitors lingered in front of each piece, moved by the depth of feeling captured in every stroke. One painting, prominently displayed at the center of the room, depicted three figures standing beneath an oak tree: the girl, the baker, and the actor. Though their features were abstract, their bond was unmistakable, radiating warmth and unity. On opening night, the turnout exceeded everyone's expectations. Friends, family, and supporters packed the gallery, eager to celebrate the girl's achievements. Even the biker showed up, dressed in his best jacket, looking slightly out of place among the polished crowd. He wandered from painting to painting, taking in the details until he reached the one of the three figures under the tree. For a long moment he simply stared, his expression unreadable. Then, turning to the girl, he said quietly, "You made me look better than I deserve." She shook her head, smiling softly. "No," she replied. "I painted you as you are now, not who you were then." His eyes glistened, and though he didn't say anything else, the gratitude in his gaze spoke volumes. Later that evening, the actor joined them, raising a glass in a toast. "To resilience," he said, his voice carrying across the room, "and to the power of second chances for all of us." The words resonated deeply, drawing applause from the crowd. But beyond the celebration, there was a shared understanding that the work wasn't finished. The movement sparked by that day in the park had grown roots, branching out into schools, neighborhoods, and cities far beyond what anyone could have imagined. People continued organizing events, advocating for inclusivity, and finding ways to support one another. What had started as a single act of courage had become a ripple effect, touching lives in ways no one could have predicted. For the biker, the journey toward redemption remained ongoing. While he no longer carried the weight of shame everywhere he went, he knew healing wasn't linear. There were still moments of doubt, times when old habits threatened to resurface. But he faced them head on, leaning on the lessons he'd learned and the relationships he'd built along the way. His volunteer work expanded, and he began speaking at conferences about accountability and growth. His message was simple, yet profound. Change starts with owning your mistakes and choosing to be better. The actor, too, kept championing causes close to his heart. From funding accessibility projects to mentoring young artists, he used his influence to amplify voices often unheard. Yet he never lost sight of humility, reminding himself daily that heroism wasn't about grand gestures. It was about showing up consistently, even when the cameras weren't rolling. "Real impact happens in the quiet moments," he once said during an interview. "It's not about being seen, it's about seeing others." As for the girl, she embraced her role as both artist and advocate, using her platform to inspire others. She traveled to schools, sharing her story and encouraging students to find strength in their uniqueness. At home, she continued creating, channeling her experiences into art that challenged perceptions and fostered empathy. Her dream of becoming a professional artist felt closer than ever, not because success came easily, but because she refused to give up. Back at the park, life carried on as usual, but with a deeper sense of purpose. Neighbors greeted each other warmly, kids played freely, and the mural stood as a testament to the power of collective action. On sunny afternoons, the girl often visited, parking her wheelchair beneath the oak tree where so many memories had been made. Sometimes she sketched. Other times she simply sat, soaking in the atmosphere. One such afternoon, the actor joined her unexpectedly, holding 2 cups of coffee. They sat together in companionable silence, watching as families strolled by and laughter echoed around them. After a while, he broke the quiet. "Do you think we'll ever stop learning?" he asked, glancing at her with a thoughtful smile. She considered the question before answering. "Probably not," she said. "And maybe that's the point. Every day gives us a chance to grow, to be kinder, braver, and more human." Her words stayed with him long after they parted ways, echoing in his mind like a mantra. Because she was right. Growth wasn't something you achieved once and then moved on from. It was a lifelong process, requiring effort, patience, and faith. in the possibility of better tomorrows. This story, of a girl, a biker, and an actor, isn't just theirs. It belongs to everyone who has ever faced adversity, sought forgiveness, or chosen kindness over cruelty. It reminds us that even in our darkest moments, light can break through. That change begins with small actions taken one step at a time, and that together we are capable of creating something beautiful out of pain. So as the seasons changed and years passed, the park remained a symbol of hope, a reminder that no matter how broken things might seem, healing is always possible. All it takes is courage, compassion, and the willingness to stand up, not just for ourselves, but for each other.